Can you tell everybody the basics of that one particular sighting?
Yes, happy to. Cool.
Start with the Omaha.
Okay. So do you want me to do it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So 2019, there was a series of UFO swarms over 10 Navy warships, but it was simultaneous. So at any given time, around one ship, there's anywhere from 6 to 14, I'd say, of these, just say, unknown units, right? So they appear like lights, but when you use thermal, you can see that they're kind of egg-shaped, and minimum size is 14 feet. They weren't small, right? So the question is from our military, so from the Omaha, the people fighting the ship, they're like, the heck is this, right? So they start filming it, getting them on radar, all this stuff. Then
How are they behaving?
So they weren't doing extreme movements, but I have been able to contact some of the helo pilots, right? And these things were self-luminous, they were illuminated, and they actually were going into the water, if not out from the water. I know for sure they were going into the water. That's called transmedium. We talked about that on one of our first podcasts together. So all we know, let's just call them, we don't know who they're from, but there's these objects that are doing this ballet around 10 Navy warships at one time, and no one's taking claim for them. So the people on the ships, their job is to fight the ship. Now, they didn't feel under threat. So like on the USS Omaha, when they're seeing all this, there's this, they call the triangle of kinetic action, like when you would fire on it, right? And it's like intent, opportunity, and capability. You have to fulfill that triangle to be like, oh, I'm going to blast that shit, right? The thing is that that triangle wasn't fully fulfilled because they didn't really know the intent, weren't sure of the capability or opportunity. So they're kind of just observing these things. However, I do know on multiple ships, they applied what they call the Ghostbuster, which is like an electromagnetic package that can down drones. But these were not like DJI drones. These were like big objects. So they were moving in this like ballet. But remember, all the ships can communicate. So now, all these years later, I have people on every level of those ships telling me, this is my experience. This is what we saw. They would go around. So there's about 100 plus in the air at one time. Whose were they? Our own government still says we don't know whose they were. And I'll tell you this, that is not uncommon. This is the craziest thing over the last few years that George and I have gotten more testimony. There was a swarm off the coast of Japan in 2021 where the ship was 300 miles from any other ship or landmass, and these things were coming from the west. And the only thing over there is Hawaii, right? No landing, no launch point. So that also, by the way, I'm not going to say that one. There's swarms on the East Coast as well. The point is, this happens more than people think. Now, is that an increased frequency? Are we seeing an increased frequency in UFOs right now, right? It's an interesting question because what we do know is we have better technology to sense them, right, and to record them. So are we just seeing more of them because our sensors are better? Why always in training ranges? Well, that's bullshit. It's not always in training ranges. The reason you know about it is because of leaks and people bringing out footage. We have the best sensors on these ships in the world. So we just hear about it more on these training ranges.
USS Omaha, so this thing was 14 feet round, spherical looking thing that followed the ship for an hour. They watched it on thermal for an hour. They had it on radar. There were several of them, up to 14 at a time. Now, what is big and round and travels? Now, these ships are 100 miles out offshore at night off the West Coast, and these things are floating right along with them. Is that a balloon? There's no tail. There's no rotor. They don't know how the hell it was flying. There's no exhaust. They don't know how it was propelled at all. And there was a bunch of them. And they got it on.
How fast were they moving?
It's not top speed wasn't matter. It was so not like super impressive, but they don't know. My buddy, somebody said to me, I'm going to really regret saying this to Jeremy. It's like they just appeared. And he really hated saying that to me because their job is to know where these came from, where they're going, where they launch, where they land. So these things would come up. So we know they would go into the water. The sentiment is they were coming also from the water. But the thing is that they were unable to down them with, these electromagnetic packages. There were so many of them. They're that big. Where did they land? Where did they launch? And so there was a fake news story put up in the New York Post. They said, case solved. It was some New York Post 2019 swarm says, case solved. there was a Chinese cargo ship called the Bass Strait. So if you go to Wikipedia, even they say it was the Bass Strait was landing and launching drones, right? Well, hold on. The Bass Strait didn't have the deck capability to land or launch up to 100 plus of these 14-foot or larger objects. Additionally, the Bass Strait was in port in Long Beach while this activity was happening. And we know people that boarded the ship on behalf of our federal government to look to see if they were part of the fuckery, right? And then we got somebody that came to me that says, my one job that night was to make sure that nothing was landing or launching off the Bass Strait. And he goes, I wish I could say that we did catch the culprits, whoever launched all these. And he says, I can't report that to you. We didn't. I watched it the whole time. But the New York Post put out this fake story that the mystery was solved.
Why do you think they did that?
It's a great question,
Just debunking, typical debunking. It's Chinese drones 100 miles out to sea at night. You don't see where they were launched from. You don't see where they went to. There's no ship out there that could be a launch platform for it. Where the hell did they come from? It's an easy way to just dismiss it, but the facts don't fit it.